equestrian world, it's like a badge of honor. How hard can you work yourself into the ground? It's not like that in normal life. You know, like my friends that have jobs, like other jobs, they're like, yeah, we have weekends off and it's okay. We don't look at each other like, well, I did all this on the weekend. Like the equestrian world is like, well, I get up at 5 and I do this, and oh my God, you went on a holiday. I can't do that, you know? And you're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be doing that. Like so much shame in taking a break.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode of Mirror in the Stall. I'm Amber Leidig with Confidence and Connection Coaching, and I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today, Olivia Towers. Olivia is a successful dressage trainer in England who has been very candid on social media and on her vlogs about the highs and lows of being in competition and what it actually takes from a mindset standpoint to be really successful. What a fun conversation with a truly authentic individual. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I do. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day so far. I wanted to introduce you guys to Olivia Towers. Olivia is from England, and she is one of the trainers that I've seen online that is willing to be super vulnerable and honest about this process of having horses in your life because it is very humbling at all times. And I feel like what the world needs today more than ever is real human beings talking about their actual experiences, not making everything pretty and perfect on social media, which is not even attainable. So thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I start out with everyone about your story of how you got into horses. How did it start for you?
Okay, so has always been into horses. Her family are really horsey. So it's mainly like a racing background for them. But when my mum was younger, she used to go like hunting and all that. So when before I could even walk, I was on a horse, on a pony. My mum kind of just like held onto my leg and just walked me around. There's actually a picture when I was younger of me. I think I must have been like 12 months and I've just been plonked horse. So I guess, yeah, it's from a really young age. And then I just have like a lot of memories of hooning around the countryside on my little like raggedy pony. My brother also rode at the time as well, so we used to just like go off into the fields, and like he used to always try and push me off. That was his favorite thing to do when we were riding. And yeah, I just have really like fond memories of just messing around really. And I used to love show jumping when I was younger, be really, really brave and would like jump anything. And then I think at like the age of 10, I had a really bad fall and sort of landed my back on a pole. And I don't know how I didn't break my back, but it was really badly bruised. And I think then I realised I actually get hurt. And I think I lost my nerve. And it was really hard going from being like quite confident with the horses to then not being confident with them. I think even at that stage, I doubted myself. Which is like to know from being so young, like to kind of sense that doubt. It's not a very nice, you're that young, you don't know how to handle it. So I moved like towards the dressaging, I think for safety originally. And then I kind of like my nature was in for a very young age was like perfectionism. And I think that a lot of people draw towards dressage because it's the finer details. So yeah, I started doing dress and just remember going in and being like, coming out and be like, oh, I can do that better. And each time I went in, that's sort of what I was thinking. And then I guess ever since. But yeah, that's how I got into horses. You want me to carry on or shall I?
No, yeah, it's fine. Keep going.
And then, so then I did a few competitions. I think from a very young age, I was like fiercely competitive because my brother was also competing. He almost beat me and he didn't care about it. And I genuinely really cared. And I got so upset that he'd nearly beat me. And he was like teasing me. He's like, ha ha, I don't even try. And I'm, almost there. And he's like, you're actually trying. And I was like, oh, so I was so happy when he stopped riding because I was like, yes. And I was like, oh, I can, like, I don't know, it was that competitive side, the sibling rivalry. So I started doing birds, which is for young riders dressage scheme. Yeah, got it. So that's just a thing they do in the UK for people, I think it was under 21s, help them up on the ladder. And I don't have like amazing memories of that, if I'm being totally honest. I was quite an introvert, shy child, and I think those players had to be quite extrovert, and I think the people who were extrovert were almost like the popular people. So it's away from the fun of riding, the struggle, which is kind of sad. And I think, again, at that age, you just don't think that it's acceptable to be the way you are. For me, it wasn't. I was like, oh, it's so wrong that I'm introvert. I need to be more outgoing. I need to not be shy. I was in the lorry, and they came to get me for team building, and that was like my and I was like crying my eyes out. I didn't want to go. And then some of the like mums that were there were like, oh, she's such a spoiled brat, like she has support from her parents to do this sport and she can't even be bothered. And I was like, they've literally got the wrong end of the stick, but that was just their perception. So that was really tough. And yeah, I didn't really enjoy those camps because of that, but then I did like the riding. So I like carried on through for the riding. Was still like really competitive, I would say, mainly with myself. I didn't really give myself the learning process. I didn't give myself the time to learn. I was very much like, it's funny looking back on it now, I was like 13, and there's me like getting really riled up at myself if I can, and I just wish I could like call my younger self and be like, it's okay through the learning process. But I was so hard on myself from a very young age. I don't really know where my mum wasn't. She just wanted me to have fun, and so I'm not sure really where it was born from. And then competing, I started like through birds. I started going to Premier Leagues and started seeing like that atmosphere, and I was like, I really liked it. I really liked the competitive atmosphere. And then just started competing more and more. And I tried to go for like the FEI ponies. So I wanted to like go toward, and I had, at the time, I just had a cob. And I don't know what it's called them over there. Do you still call them cobs?
Yeah.
Like a scruffy little pony. And she had like feathered feet and stuff. And I was seeing all the other kids not all the other kids, but the ones I noticed were on these really flash little ponies. And I was like, damn, I was like, wish I could have that. Like, I'm behind them and all this stuff at like 50, so sad. But yeah, so I was looking at that, going for it, and hard experience when one of the people from Birds actually, like, I got longlisted or shortlisted. No, longlisted for the European ponies, so to like go onto like the programming with that, and somebody from Birds basically said like my mum and to me, like, you're just not good enough. Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. And that was like really hard to hear, again, young, because you just think they're right. You're like,
yeah,
oh, you are right. I was like, I'm not good enough.
Right.
That was quite damaging, like actually looking back at it for like a young kid. But anyway, my mum's quite a cracker, and she was like, we'll show you. So we carried on. The pony actually went lame, so that was sort of that cut off. But really adamant that I wanted to like do it as a career. when I was 15, I was training with someone, and I went and worked there over the summer holidays, and he was literally my idol. Like, I used to watch him ride, and amazing, like what he can do with the horses. I used to think, not even as a rider, just as a human, I was like, wow. And he sort of like took me under his wing. We used to like hang out, and he was just so like full of life, and I was like, I want to do this. And I was working on the yard, so happy to like put the hours in, didn't care like what I was doing, just was like, yeah, I really enjoy this. And I just didn't want to go back to school. I was like, I want to work on the yard all the time. And what was really nice as well is his showgroom was like teaching me all the stuff like plaiting, and I was so excited because I remember I used to always have this, like with my mum, but this thing about like wanting everything to be like pretty and pristine. And at this yard it was like the horses were like, you know, they were bandaged and they all matched, and I was like, wow, this is so good. My mum was like, for goodness sake, like stuff like that doesn't matter. And then obviously in the dressage world it's like a big thing, so I was like, I was born to be in this world. So that was really nice. And I just at such a young age, when I had been in an environment with like birds and stuff, where it'd be very difficult for me, it was so nice to have that culture, that like really supporting culture. And because I was the youngest one, I felt like they really took me under their wing, and it was just really, really. So I had to go back to school to do my GCSEs. But from then that I was gonna ride, and that's what I wanted to do. So I didn't really pay attention in my last year, because I knew that when exams had finished, I was literally just going to go and do it. And it was all like lined up. And actually my where I had been, they'd just bought a new yard, and it was like they were doing it up. So like something I love things up. You know, like when you're a kid, you like changing your room around and like all. I love stuff like that.
I used to
I was like, so exciting
on a regular basis.
Yeah, like I was like I get to go build a yard with them. It was so cool. So the day after my last exam, yeah, I went to work there, and it was just amazing. Like, oh, so good, and I was so excited. But I think like the reality starts to kick, doesn't it? Actually, of when you've left school, and you go into a full-time like job, it did hit me quite hard, like physically. I was very tired all the time, which is fine. I don't think, you know, hard work's never killed anyone, and I do think it was a really good grounding. The other thing that I did struggle with a little bit is, I think I was 16 and like a little bit not sure of myself, because I was actually really insecure. I think like the relationship between me and my mum, it came out a little bit like disrespectful. So what happened, I remember this so well. I was there and I'd been working there for a few months, and my mum used to train with them, so she came up and we just had an argument, just like a normal mother and daughter argument, you know, these things. But it had been in front of my boss and some clients, and I was like, professionalism at that age. And yeah, and it was something so trivial. I think it was over, Mum wanted me to wear these mucking out wellies, and I was like, I'm not being seen in those. And anyway, then I think my boss was being really ungrateful, and then I felt like, you know, like shot with shame. I was like, and I went on the defensive, and I was like, anyway, that all happened. And then from that, my mum was just like, oh, get away from me. And my boss was like, right, you need like slapping down a peg or two. So they actually took, I had 2 horses there. They took both horses off me to ride, and I wasn't allowed to ride any of the other horses. So my mum drove my horses back home, which was like 2.5 hours away. I was only allowed to like do the skivvy work, like mucking out, wasn't allowed to do anything. And that was really, like, at the time I was like, oh my gosh, I've set out like to fulfill my dreams, and I'm literally like not doing it. And I was like, grr. But looking back, it was so good because it grounded me. I think, you know, I've been very lucky that my parents have supported me, And I think if that hadn't have happened, I could have titled kid turning into adult, because I don't think you grow up, it's not necessarily that you grow out of that stuff. You know, I know people who are like 50 and are quite entitled. So I'm really glad experience to sort of go like, I think that it knocked me too much one way, but that's okay. That's, again, like, these things are very right and to balance out, and I'm extremely sensitive. So I think I take harder than other people, which is, again, one of those things. Yeah, that was tough. But again, good. And then I then started riding again, and was allowed to ride my boss's horses, which again is incredible, because, you know, he, at the time, he was winning like national titles. He had a string of horse, and it was just amazing to sit on like that power of horse. And yeah, so I was warming up his horses. I had my own, and I was going for like the Great Bronze as well. So that's in juniors. So that's advanced medium level, which was good. The only problem I had with this is the expectation I put on myself was huge, and I was very much comparing myself to other riders my age. I was looking at their better riders, and I really felt from that age that I almost wanted to like stop competing, strip everything away, and work on the basics, you know, like getting my position better. Understand that wasn't really the culture I was in, that wasn't really the environment I was in. It was more like competing thing. So then I just kept going, and it was almost like putting a plaster in. And I, like, in the back of my head, if like now I was in that situation, I'd be like, no, I'm gonna get to the root of it, and I'm gonna sort out why movement's going wrong. But at the time, I think the young riders junior stuff is very good to be in, because you haven't got long. You've got, especially juniors, you've got 2 years on the team, and then young riders you've got from 18 to 21, and you're always looking at people and going like, you're up against time, right? Which is strange, because then in the senior world you're not. So I think there was part of me that wanted to, obviously I'm competitive, like push forwards, but then there was this sense in me that knew I didn't understand anything.
Right.
So I think for me that became very apparent when I went to, so I got shortlisted for the Europeans at Young Riders. There's lots that went on in between this, but I'm just sort of elaborating from the mindset stuff. So I went to the European camp. So there's 6 of us, 4 go through on the team, and then there's 2 reserves. And I knew going into it I was like a reserve, and that's fine. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm actually here. And then I went in, and the lesson I had was with, I think, a German trainer. And this was like one of the hardest experiences, because this is where everything came, not crashing down, but I felt like seeing, like, I told everyone this, but no one listened. So the guy gave me a lesson, and he was like, okay, he was like, right, let's take your spurs away. And I was like, right. And he's like, and let's take your whip away. And I was like, right. And then the horse didn't move. And like, for me, I knew that was wrong. And I'd been like thinking, this is wrong. And then, like, you know, they started to pull everything apart, and they were like, your horse isn't through. This isn't right. This is right. And I was like, I was really upset and gutted, because I knew that. But then, you know, I feel like it's difficult. The people who were like maybe helping me, maybe could have like stepped up at that time, and I felt like they didn't. They kind of let me take the bullet, but you know what I mean. And at 16, 17, 18, that's really difficult. But again, it's just one of those things. So yeah, that was really hard. And he basically just said, like, you've got no basic training. And I was like, I know. And I'd spoken, I'd done international shows as well, and I'd spoken to one of my favourite people, Isla Orty. So she was our selector, and I'd spoken to her, and I'd come out at this international show, and we were like, you watched your tests through with them afterwards. And I was like, again, knew that it wasn't right, knew that it didn't feel right. And she sat with me, and my walk pirouette was an absolute disaster, because I didn't know what a walk pirouette was. I didn't understand it. I'd just been told sort of how to do it. And so I was like, didn't understand the logic of it. So anyway, I'd just gone into an international competition, not knowing what a walk pirouette was, as you do. And we were looking through it after, and she was like, okay, explain to me how you do a walk pirouette. And I was like, don't know. And she's like, well, explain to me what a walk pirouette is. And I was like, don't really know. And she was like, okay. She's like, this isn't good. She was like, you need to understand what you're doing to get it better. And I was like, yeah, I know. This is like this child over here. It's like a perfectionist that loves like order and structure. Is like screaming, I know. It's just not the environment I'd been in, which is okay, but it's just sort of where I'd ended up. So yeah, that was really tricky for me. I felt very frustrated. I felt like I couldn't be who I was like born to be. I know that sounds really cheesy. So I left the yard that I was on, not in bad terms, just it wasn't right for me. And they were fine with that. I was fine with that. I needed to find something that fitted for me. And I remember ringing mum and just being like, I can't do it like this. Like, I can't train like this. Not that they were doing anything wrong. It's just not how it didn't fit with me. And I was like, that's fine. So I went home, and luckily my mum and dad had moved up to Herefordshire, which is close to where I'd been working. And mum had got a yard there, because the idea was always for me to go back there and like start riding. So I just ended up going for it. And again, going into it, there was a lot of doubt from people. Someone said to me, like, oh, you'll just be a flash in the pan young rider. You won't go anywhere as a rider. And again, that was like, I guess it really hurt at the time, but I sort of was like, no, I feel like there's something in me. There's been something in me the whole of my journey that however low I've got, it's been like, keep going. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been a whisper sometimes, like, when you talk to people and they're like, I've just always known. No, like mine's been like really quiet, but it's always been there. So yeah, I started, just started my yard with my mum, and my mum, she's amazing. She knows so much about horse care, but she's dressage wise, we probably knew the same amount at that time. So it was tricky to go from being in an environment with like trainers and all this stuff to then going and doing it yourself. And so at the time actually, I still had my young rider horse and I was still going with that. But actually really sad, he kept going lame before all the shows that I needed to do to like sort of qualify. So that never like followed through, which was like really gutting to sort of, it's hard when you think you're aiming for something and then it sort of gets snatched away from you. So that was tough. But then mum sort of had been advised to have like a string of young horses. And this was actually when I started training with Charlotte Dujardin. And she, and like her and Carl's philosophy is very much get them young and you train them up. And I was like, wow, this is really different to sort of what I had before, because my young rider horse had been he'd been a schoolmaster, and I never really liked getting on someone else's horse, where you're like, it's weird, it's not like how you've molded it, but that's sort of what had happened. And so anyway, so when I was training with Charlotte, we ended up getting a bunch of horses, like very young, and like staggered in age, and started training them up. And that was again, like it was a massive like, whoa, I'm completely out of my depth here. But Charlotte was great. Like she really gave you like a lot of confidence with the young horses. She was very like, I think that's why she's such a great rider. She's like, come on, you can do this. So that was really, really good. And that really helped me with the young horses. And then it was really tricky with when I was training with Charlotte, is I very much doubted myself. And I think it came out in like frustration of like not understanding. So I've never really spoken to her about it, but I guess like it could come out in looking like you were being a bit of a diva, but I wasn't. I was just extremely frustrated with like, I can't explain it, but basically from a very young age, I knew the feeling. Like I could watch someone doing a dressage test and know what they're feeling, yes, even if I hadn't felt it. but I couldn't replicate it, and I would get so annoyed at myself that I couldn't do that, because I've always had such a high sense of like feeling the right thing. So when I don't get the right thing, I get very annoyed at myself, and I think that happened a lot when I was training. And I think as well, I think I was 22 when I started training with Charlotte, and I think she thought I'd had more of the basic training when I was younger, but I hadn't. So we were doing things and I was like, well, I still haven't had the basics. I'm like, I don't understand. And I think, to be honest, I put a lot of pressure on training with her because she was who she was, and I wanted to impress her. And I also struggled a lot, like if she rode the horses and I watched, and I was like, I used to think like I had to be like her and I had to ride like her, and I was like, I should be able to do that. And I completely didn't realize, like, that's Charlotte, like the best rider in the world. Let's think about this. And I put so much pressure on myself to impress her, to ride like her, to just, it just got too much at the stage I was at. And I always say, like, I kind of wish I had waited to train with her later on, because I think mindset wise I was not in a good place. And I always say, like, now if I trained with her, it would be like, yeah, I'm ready for this. But I think I was quite fragile, which was really tough, and that was really hard. And I felt very much like when I stopped training with her, I felt very much that I'd let her down. I felt like a big failure. I felt, you know, people said to me, like, I heard on the grapevine, like, oh, well, if Charlotte can't get her to ride, who can? Because, you know, Charlotte's amazing. And that really hurt. I was like, oh no, another blow. So then I was basically in a right mess, not due to anybody. I never blame anybody for where I was. It was just, you know, a mixture of my character mixed with the circumstances, mixed with like life throwing things at you. But like now I would never blame anyone for anything. So then what happened after that, I had all these horses, didn't know what to do with them, had all this horsepower, and was completely lost. So yeah, which was still competing, still going out, just getting frustrated that I literally couldn't do anything. So then I started training with a guy called David Pincus. And so David used to train, he had something to do with Spanish School of Riding. He was very like military, old school, and started training with him. And I remember actually I went for a lesson with him, and I went there to try and, because he's like the guru of Piaffe round by us. So I went there to do some Piaffe, and I warmed up, and then he was like, right, let's just do some trot. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went into trot rising, and he was like, go sitting. And I was like, oh, I can't go sitting yet until she's, you know, a little this and a little, no, go sitting. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I went sitting, and he was like, oh. And I was like, oh. It was just all those awkward moments. And he's like, okay, we might need to work on this. Bearing in mind, right, I'd represented my country and I'd ridden internationally, and I couldn't do sitting trot. I know, it says a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, he just made me go around the outside of the arena and sitting trot. That was it. He's like, you're not doing anything else. He's like, just do this. And I was like, it was hugely embarrassing. And I was like, this is so awkward. But it was almost like my soul was like, thank God somebody has noticed. Like, I felt like I'd been covering up everything. And I was like, well, the judges had noticed because I wasn't doing very well, but I felt like I'd sort of got away with it, and I've been faking it, and I hated that. So anyway, yeah, we started training with him, and he stripped me right back. I remember I sometimes spent a whole lesson in walk, just with him going, feel the two reins, feel the horse coming over its back, you know, what's your leg doing? Like, favorite things he taught me was like getting them to give in the rib cage, stuff that I knew I needed, but I didn't have a toolbox. And so David was incredible with giving me a toolbox. That's what I've always said. Like, he stripped it right back, and he just helped massively. And that was sort of with my career where I was like, yeah, I think I can do this. And there was still massive self-doubt with competing and stuff. But the training, I was like, it's not that I didn't enjoy it before, but like it always felt like I never understood it. I was always like chasing my tail and running around in circles, and I was like, oh. But then with David, it was like, oh, this is so good. So yeah, that was really good. And then
yeah, imagine just because you had to go through that process, you appreciated that piece more. Like maybe if that had been given to you earlier on, you would have been like, this is boring, I just want to go show. But your level of appreciation for that process was so ingrained in you after so many years that finally you were like, I love this part. Which I feel like it's pretty common, because I remember when I was little showing, I just had a pretty good horse. And so I always thought, I'm a good rider, I can go show with all of my friends. Like I had an amazing trainer, and I got up through college, and then I couldn't go to college because I was like, I just want to be a horse trainer. I don't even know what I'm doing here. But then when I started actually riding other horses, in my head had really just made myself an amazing rider because I just did good on my horse, until I started actually riding other horses, and I was like, oh, they don't feel like all of these the experience that I've had. And even when I first started training, I would haul out to different trainers, and I would think, I started this horse, he's amazing, I'm amazing, we're all amazing, and get there. And I remember trainer Charles got on, and he was like, your horse is so behind the leg, I'm almost embarrassed for you. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, it has no concept. And I was in my head, I was like, no, it's amazing. And so it's like, there's been so many times where I've hauled to clinics and stuff thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing, and I'm going to be super impressive. And then you get there and it's like, smack. It's like, shit. I've interviewed 2 of the trainers actually so far that have done that for me. And they were like, oh my gosh. And I was like, it was so eye-opening. But that's the piece, right? Because then you start to really appreciate like, oh, there's so much more to this. And it feels so good when you can feel all of the things and go, oh, I understand all of that. I can fix anything now because I can feel all of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. He really like transformed everything. And the funny thing about David is, if you go to their yard, it's not flash, it's old school. And it just made me think, like, I just don't care about the flash stuff. I just want the horse to understand me, and me understand the horse, and us to like get each other, you know, and like work through stuff. And that to me was the ultimate thing that I wanted. So yeah, he really helped that. Do you want me to carry on with my ramble?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So David I trained with for 4 years, was competing still. Things were definitely better with the competition stuff. But was it before David or after David? No, it was with David. Was it just before? It was just before. I can't remember. But anyway, it's besides the point. So I basically qualified. It was with David. I qualified for the regionals, and I qualified for 8 tests. And I think I was like, right, in these 8 tests, I've got to qualify for the nationals, because I've got 8 chances. So we went to separate regionals, and the first one didn't go so great, but I was like, that's fine because I've got more. And then each time I did a test, I hyped myself up more and more and more that I had to go and win. And I kind of, in hindsight, wish I'd just said to myself, look, lovely, like you're so young, like let's just again like chip away. It's because I think I had the thing with David, I was like, it's gonna fix everything, bam. And I was like, it's not fixing everything quickly. I was like, what's going on? And you know, my horses still had the problems that I'd given them when I didn't understand. They were still there. Just because I was getting better didn't mean that they'd forgotten. And the main horse that this really came out with was my now Grand Prix horse. He is very, very sensitive. And if you are having a off day or a like tense day, like it will go through to him straight away. And he really fed off my insecurities, and it made him very insecure. But the way his insecurity came out was by like brute, like he's a big boy, but like just running off. So he'd lock on the bit and just whoosh, gone. So the amount of tests there are filmed of me, like, him just trying to go, get away from it. And again, like, I didn't understand. I just got tense. And so he got more tense, and then I'd come out crying, and then it just kept building up more and more and more. And he had this thing with flying changes. I think it's what we did. We taught him them too early when he wasn't ready. Again, because I didn't understand. And I would get very wound up about the changes. And so that wound him up. Anyway, so it came out in the arena. And so the regionals, it was like no other. It was like, you know, it was no different. It came out at the regionals, but I was mortified. And this test, like, if I write a book, this will be the opening scene, because I just remember being in the warm-up, and I like to call it the red mist had descended, and I was like stone-faced in the warm-up, like, oh my gosh, like looking from the outside, you'd be like, what a brat. On the inside feelings, it's like years of shame, and like just utterly hating myself, utterly thinking I was an absolute disgrace, letting everyone down. Like, my parents had helped me financially. I was like, this is like, who do you think you are? Like, you're rubbish. And like, you know, that self-talk that's absolutely evil. Like, you would never say it to anyone else, but you say it to yourself. That was what was conversation going on in my head. And I was trying to like, no, it's fine. You know, like back and forth conversations. And like, the horse had no chance of doing anything, because I'm there like fighting myself. And then I think it was this stage, where I used to put music in my ears to try and drown out that voice. Didn't logically think I can still hear it, but I can't hear people around me. So I looked like I was ignoring everyone. And the steward had been calling me, and my mum was like, lost the plot. She was like, what are you doing? You're being such a brat. Because she was embarrassed, like her child's being around. Like, it's embarrassing for a mother, I understand, because I always think, like, you know, your child is the replica, isn't it, of you? And my mum was like, she felt shame because she didn't want people to think badly of me or her. I felt shame because she felt shame. The girl who was with us, who is the girl actually who I used to work with at the first yard I went to, she was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And it was just a disaster. So I went into the test, and it was just, do you know what? It wasn't even that bad. I think I got 66%. It wasn't terrible. And I came out, and Emma was like, oh, that was good. And I was like, bawling. And I was bawling and bawling. And I think it was after that show, my mum said to me, like, you've got to just stop riding and competing. That's it. Don't want you to do it. I think she was just exhausted with watching her daughter, like, literally tear herself apart. She's so tired, and she's like, I just don't want to do it anymore. And then for me, that was like the moment where I realized, like, okay, that would be the worst thing, like having it all taken off me and it all disappearing. And so I went, I'm just going to go to the next regionals and enjoy it. And so this was with a different horse who wasn't so sensitive, but again, like, the test was okay, but it wasn't great. But I was happier, and I did enjoy it. And there were different factors at the show that should have thrown me, they didn't. And it was really nice. And I was like, oh, okay, like, this is what I need to do. I need to just learn to enjoy riding again instead of putting all this pressure on myself. Again, though, I think after that, I thought that was it. that was the flip of the mind. Flip of the mind. I've done it. I've nailed it. No, I for, you know, many years went, like, you know, it's sort of like one step forwards, two steps back. Like, that is literally how it went for me. And that was when I was 20. I'm 27 now. That was when I think it was 3-4 years ago. And it's just been, it's been hard since then, but it's not hard in the fact because I don't feel stuck. I always feel like it's moving, everything's changing. It's not that I'm just stuck. So basically, after that show, I went and Googled how to improve your mindset. And that was it. Like, that was literally, like, the thing is, in my character is I'm an obsessive character. So when I lock onto something, whether it's good or bad, I lock onto it. So luckily it was just a good thing and my parents thought I've gone insane. They were like, she's literally insane. Like, I'd watch, you know, like on YouTube, these motivational talks, people who, like, you know, like life coaches, mindsets. I just sit there watching it. And I took everything to the T. Like, I think I listened to a guy called Jim Rowe, and he's like old school. He's dead now, but he's was amazing. And he said like it's really good to learn another language. So I was like, right. So off I went, tried to learn this other language. And my mum was like, what are you doing? And I was like, don't know. Anyway, that was not balanced life because it was too much. But I just became obsessed. I think nobody had told me that you can change your mindset. Nobody. Like not at school. My mum and my dad, I think they just come from that generation where people don't talk about mindset. So they didn't speak about it. And I just thought it was my character to be negative. You know, like people are introvert or extrovert. I thought you're just negative. Like that's your character. Until I started looking into it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's not. And for me, I was like, I have to tell everyone about this. So that's where the social media stuff came from. So yeah, it's just been a wild journey.
Yeah, and I think there's so much interesting perspective within that, right? Because it does start when you're little. That's when all of that stuff does come up. And you were put into a position where you did have the opportunity to ride. I felt the same. My mom was a single mom and I had a really good horse, but it was financially, it was tough. Like I, borrow tack to go to shows. And so I didn't realize till later how much pressure I was putting on myself for the show. Because if I didn't do good, then I was letting my mom down and she was wasting money.
Yeah.
But my go-to was I would, it was funny, you'd come out with a blue ribbon on like the rail classes and stuff. And she's like, and you wouldn't even smile. Yeah. And it was like, it wasn't because I wasn't excited, but it was just like, that's just kind of who I was, right? I didn't want to go and cause a big, and then moving up through all of that stuff, same like having that experience of being, oh, she's just quiet, or I looked spoiled when I was at shows because I wasn't, and so that perspective of I was being really hard on myself. I felt shame when I didn't do good. Like same for you when people are looking at, oh, look at you, you have a horse and you're this young. Look at your parents are supporting you. Why aren't you X, Y, Z? Mm-hmm. For people to see from a different lens and go, oh, maybe that's not what's actually happening. Even when you were speaking to, when you were in the warm-up arena and you were being called and it looked like you were just blowing everyone off, like for people to be able to look at people with more grace and go, especially at shows, because I have a lot of dressage clients and I always say, because my thing is like rein cow horse, like I'm like 3D eventing in the Western world, right? So, but I think the people's personalities go with their disciplines. And for all my dressage, my DQs, as I lovingly call them, it's like so rigid, right? It's like you have to have this quality of here and then at this letter, and even at your shows, it's like you show at 2:34. Everything is so structured.
Yeah.
That by the time I always ask them, why are you showing? Because that's going to make a difference. Like at your core, why are you actually here? Because if you're tying in all the money you've spent, all the hours you've spent into one, I was talking to a lot of them at the finals show that they had, there was so much writing on one score.
Yeah.
Because the whole year they had to qualify, and if they didn't do good there, then everything else was a wash. And I was like, you don't have a shot in hell if you go in like that, because just the amount of tension and discord that's created from those thoughts within your body is going to cause the tension in your horse, which is going to cause you to not do well. And I was like, what is at the base of dressage? It's that balance, it's self-carriage. How can anything carry itself in a balanced, relaxed manner, or even be expressive? Where I think that fine line of, you don't want your horse to be dull and like a robot, but like where is that line? That I think that's what people have to find for themselves to be able to create within their horse. Like, I'm excited to be here. I want to show that I'm excited because it's just one show, right? It's just one number. It's just, but like, how do you, to unwind people is what I've been doing. Like, start out, why is it? But just even asking that question, why do you want to show? And they're like, well, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, like, and all this stuff comes out. Like, no wonder I would get these horses. I had one client for so long, and she was Grand Prix, and her horse started, and they're so fit at that point, and there's so much pressure. And then now she's at shows, and he's wanting to jump out of the court, and she's like, what? And I get the horse, and it's this huge muscle of tension, and I'm like, oh, this horse is fucking scary. Like, you ride this thing, but it's all because of this pressure of, oh, well, he's this age, it's this level, we should be doing this, all of this, And it's just
And the
like, but
funny,
why?
the ironic thing with horses is they do not react well to perfectionism and black and white thinking. I think from riding young horses, like riding the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, I've really learned that the less you try and control them, the more in control you are. The more rigid you are with them, the more danger you're in. Like, obviously they've got to go forwards and they've got to go where you want them to go, but actually, you know, sit a little bit softer, be a little bit more lenient, and actually you're safer than being like, right, you are not allowed to spook there, you have to go everywhere I want, like, oh my gosh, you've bucked, this is terrible. Like, if you actually just ease up a little bit on the perfectionism, they are so much better. So much better.
Yeah. And I feel like even speaking to that stuff, it's always I was like, what is the hardest part about doing upper level movements? And it's like when you fight the resistance. And I was like,
Yeah.
what if you created a space where your horse trusted you and you had that solid foundation where you were emotionally stable and gave a lot of grace for them to make mistakes? They wouldn't be resisting you and those movements wouldn't be difficult. And they're
I
like,
know, it's so
wait,
true.
what? I'm like,
It's so true.
yeah. So, yeah. So for you now, knowing all of this stuff and having all of these experiences, and I think that journey is so pivotal, right? Because it's why you can look at it and know how important it is, and how it's such a bigger piece of it even, that isn't talked about. Like, no one talked about this stuff with me when I was little. They don't talk about it in school, like you said. Like, such a gap in, and I think it's worldwide.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
the way things are ran, that, you know, what does it look like for you now? Like, now that you're aware of this stuff and have gone through all of that.
I feel this, the last 6 months, maybe to a year, I felt like I've really leveled out. So after I stopped training with David, which we trained together for 4 years, I just couldn't find a trainer that I like really clicked with again. And I didn't leave David because anything went wrong. It was just, I felt like it was time for a fresh pair of eyes. And then I just couldn't find the right trainer, couldn't find someone to help me, especially with the young horses. I felt like when I had lessons with the young horses, people would just be like, you know, whatever. And then I came across, I've known him for years, and I've really respected him as a rider. And I came across a guy called Callum Whitworth, and he does a lot of young horse riding, and he hasn't actually, I've competed to higher level than him, which is really funny. But he didn't need to have competed to that level to, you know, to know what to do. And so I've been training with him now for 6 months, and he, like, we get on so well, and he respects me, I respect him. We can have that open conversation, and he gets me. So that's been really good. I also go to Carl once a month, maybe sometimes once a week, and I feel like in such a good place now to train with him, which is amazing. And Callum and Carl merge so well together. And then I've also done started doing the groundwork, which is, again, has like opened up a huge a huge world that I just didn't like, not that I didn't want to do, I just didn't have anyone to teach me it. So I've always really admired like Tristan Tucker, but obviously he's in Holland, so it was not attainable. And then a girl called Claire Gallimore actually trained with him there, and she now teaches over here, so she's been teaching me all that. So I just feel like now I think it's so important to get the right knowledge, and to have the training and to have the people there explaining stuff. And I think now I've just really accepted, like, it's okay to learn. They're not looking at you in a way like, oh my God, you didn't know that, which I thought before. They're looking at you as like, I want to teach this girl. And then when you get it, they're like, oh yes, well done. And you know, you can see the trainers getting as much from it as I am. And it's really special to do that. So yeah, I just feel like in a very like peaceful place with my horse. And don't get me wrong, like, it goes wrong. Like, training goes wrong for me. I think now I've really noticed my character is I would come out from a training session before and have gone, well, this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong. Whereas now I come out of a training session and I was like, more focus on the good. Not that I'm ignoring the bad, but I'm more focusing on the good. If I have a bad day now, or a bad week, or a bad month, because sometimes that happens with horses, it like, it's hard to explain. Like, I will, yes, I'll probably like it actually happened Monday night. I couldn't sleep because I'm thinking over in my head, what can I do better? Like, what should I be changing? What should I be doing? But it comes from a place of, it's not a negative talk. It's more of like an obsessive, like, I'm obsessed with understanding horses. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a few people told me it was, but I think now I'm starting to realize it's not a bad thing. It's if you let it, like, it's if you're doing it in a negative way. I'm like, how can I do this differently? How can I change this? How can I sort of improve for that horse? So I think for me, like, what's really changed is accepting the process of learning. Has been a huge one for me that I've really had to come to grips with. And for me, I had to have the right people training me to help me with that. I can't have somebody scream at me and tell me, like, that was shit, do it again, because it doesn't work for me, because I need to understand what I'm doing wrong. When I understand what I'm doing wrong and they give me the space to get it right, then I'm fine. It's if someone like hammers on the pressure of like, you got to get it right now, that's when I start like messing up and getting tense. But like, so I'm really lucky with Callum, Carl and Claire. They're all very, don't care if I make a mistake, which is so nice. And Carl's like, he's very jokey with it, and like, yeah, he like not puts the pressure on, but he'd be like, right, come on, you've got to get it this time. But you never feel like he's thinking, oh my god, what an idiot, when you get it wrong. He wants you to get it right. And so like, we were doing my pirouettes the other day and I was like, I'm just not good at this. And because, you know, the negative thought still comes out, like, it might be there forever, but like, it's managing it. It's like, you know, getting a handle on it. And he was like, no, he was like, you can do it. He's like, you just need to understand what, like, which stride's going wrong. And he'll be like, right, which stride is going wrong? So it'd be like, okay, the third stride. So he's like, right, when you go in, like, check the third. And they're just all so logical. I just feel like, for me, that they're so great because they're happy themselves with who they are. They're not trying to get an ego boost out of me, like, of their pupil going well. So if I do badly, it's not a reflection on them. That's been really great for me, to not feel that pressure. So yeah, it's been really good. And I think doing my first Grand Prix as well has really been amazing, to sort of get to that stage and to have trained a horse from like prelim to Grand Prix. And it has not been an easy journey, and I made so many mistakes, which I think I always try and encourage people when they're like, oh, I've messed my horse up. I'm like, no, trust me, like, my horse was so scared of like a flying change, like I can't even explain to you. And now like his best thing is his ones, and it's because like I now give the horses the space to learn. I give myself the space to learn. Yeah, it's just such a nice, peaceful way to train them. And I've still got so much to learn, so much to learn. And it's just knowing that that's okay. And I don't need to know it all now. And that's fine. It's really important to me.
I think that big piece is reminding people, like, you're never going to know everything. Like, there is no like end thing that you're going to get to. We're like, whew, okay, good, check. It's like, I think it's super powerful that at your age you figured it out, because I have a couple people, and it's always, when I do this work, when I'm coaching people, usually you have to get into your 30s and go, I had like a major meltdown at 30, but I still didn't get it. I just turned 40, and literally the last 4 years is when I've been like, oh, and just realizing that the relaxation piece is like almost the biggest piece, to have that like balanced tension for them to. And then when you're speaking about when you have trainers, I always tell clients, because there's so many people that come to me that are like, they have trainer trauma. Such a big thing. Trainers that have been so hard on them, and they keep that with them, and it's like, well, why did you stay there? And it's like, I don't know, because I think they were a trainer and they were right. And I'm like, So to be able to get people to a place where if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. If you
Yeah,
don't feel connected with that person, just walk away. It's
it's a
fine.
relationship though, isn't it? And not everybody gets on with everybody. So
Yeah, exactly. And going back to like, as a trainer, if they're making you feel that way, that's how the horses are going to feel under them as well. Like, so
yeah,
if
so
you don't
true.
walk away for yourself, walk away for your horse.
Yeah, so true. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So I know with all of this interesting shifts of our world now and the way that everyone is operating differently, I know before you were doing clinics, or demos and stuff where people would come
Yeah.
and you have your vlog and your podcast, but how has your training stuff shifted now that now that no one can go near each other?
Yeah. So it's basically I've started doing online the teaching, which was difficult because I think a lot of people were skeptical about it.
Mhm.
And as well, like the older generation are just like, I don't understand it, so I'm not going to broach it. But as I've had like, I would like to call them, they're like the keen beans, the people that are straight in, they were like, yeah, I'll do it. As I've started doing them, and they've started giving out reviews, I think people are more accepting of it for sure. So I've been doing that. I also do like online video reviews. So people send me like a clip of them riding, and like I feel like I have a good gift at explaining how things should feel, how to do things, like putting it into words. So that's really good for the like video, voiceovers. So that's sort of like the teaching side. And actually it's been really interesting doing it and spending more time at home. And I've really come to the realization that I want to start my schedule so that I get to spend more time at home. I went through a stage when I started vlogging and becoming more well known, so to say, of being like, wow, I want to take on all the opportunities. This is really cool. Like people want me here, they want me here, like doing everything. And I burnt out really badly, very, very badly, like business side, but it had a massive impact on my riding. So like last year I had, I got like burnout, which gave me severe like depression. It was so bad. It was so sad. I like literally didn't want to ride the horses. And yeah, I just got to the point where I said to my mum, not that I was going to like, sorry, this has got really deep when I was trying to explain.
Perfect.
I got
This
to
is
the
where
point.
they all go. I don't know. It's perfect.
I got to the point last year where I said to my mum when I was riding Eagle, I was like, oh, I just want to die. Not like I'm going to go and kill myself. I was never going to go and kill myself.
Right.
But I was like, what is the point? I was like, I'm like, ugh. I was like, no joy, nothing. Everything had been sucked out of life. And the mad thing is, like, I'm a Christian. So, like, I've got a massively strong faith. And I completely got disconnected from my faith, which I think had a massive repercussion on it as well. And I was just like, what is the point? I was like, what are we all doing? We're all just working our asses off, working ourselves into the ground for nothing. I was like, because like the joy part wasn't there. And so I spoke to, luckily, like through church, I have an amazing connection of people. And I just went for a cup of tea with my friend, and she's actually a therapist. And she's like, you okay? And I was like, fine. This is before it had like all come out. And she's like, you sure? And I was like, whoa, and it just all burst out. And I just said to her, I was like, I wish I could be like a robot because it would be so much easier. It would be more productive. I could get more stuff done. And she was like, you really think that's what life's about? And I was like, oh dear. I was like, we've got a problem here. So basically what I'd done is I'd numbed out. So where this originally came from, and it's so messed up how this actually happened, is somebody said to me, because I post my life on videos and social media. I'm very open, very vulnerable, which is amazing, but it does have quite a dark backlash sometimes of people giving you advice, and I'm very much used to listen to everyone's advice. So there's one person, I think she sent me out the goodness of her heart, God love her. She basically said, you need to stop playing the victim, because I was crying on a vlog for some reason. And I think I'd cried 3 days in a row. I don't know, maybe I was meant to be on my period or something, but I was emotional. And she basically said, like, stop playing the victim. Like, you have all this stuff laid out for you. Stop playing the victim. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's right. So anyway, I was like, right. So I turned to like a stoned-faced whoosh.
Right.
And every time I felt something negative, I'd be like, no, because I'd listened to a podcast. I'd become basically obsessed with information. I've become like an information junkie of listening to these podcasts on mindset. And, you know, I basically hadn't slowed down, and I'd had so much information come in that I hadn't let it process, and I hadn't picked it. So I was getting different messages. So I listened to this podcast that said, you are what you think, which is correct. But I thought if I had a negative thought, I was just being negative. So I need to not have a negative thought. Didn't really share this with anyone. And it went, it
don't be a human. Don't dare be a human.
yeah, literally. And then, so anyway, so she sent this message, and I was like, oh my God, she's right. And it must have just been the podcast at the time, and then this message, and I was like, right, that is it. So I turned into this, like, yeah, I have to be happy all the time. Don't put on your stories that you've had a bad day, because people will think. And so I was just like, and it wasn't even that I was faking it. I genuinely convinced myself that, like, ta-da! And I started this thing called the 5 a.m. club. So I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was running, I was reading. I was like, bam, I was production. Like, people were like on the vlogs like, wow, you're so like efficient. I was like, yes, I am. But I literally wasn't being a human. It was crazy. And so, yeah, it all came from that. And I think what made it harder as well is I went to a show and I was being like this, and then I won, and it's the first Premier League I've ever won, and I won twice there, and I was like, oh my God, it's working. I was like, this, you're not playing the victim, it's working.
Oh, no.
I made a slogan, and I even put it on a hoodie, don't play the victim, right? And I was like, bam, got this. Anyway, then it all came to this head where, yeah, I spoke to this therapist, and she said, you've numbed the bad, but you've also numbed the good along with it, because you can't numb out one emotion. You can't, it's not possible. You numb them all out. And so she's like, you've lost the good in trying to get rid of the bad. So she's like, of course you don't think life's worth living, because, you know,
right.
It's like you've got nothing. And so, so basically, like, spoke to her and was like, right, I need to slow down. And I'd had like, this funny, it's all happened at the same time. It happened last year at the same time. Where competition kicks in, more stuff happens with social media, and I get too busy. So last year I'd had a month off. So this year I hadn't learned anything, and it appeared again. Here it was again. So I was like, right. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stop everything. I put a message out onto my social media saying I'm stopping vlogging for a while. Like, basically poured my heart out and said, like, I've got depression. And it's because I've done too much. And everyone was so graceful, so lovely. Okay, there were a few knobs that were like, oh, you shouldn't have depression, you've got money. I was like, you are way off here. Way off. But that's fine, that happens. So yeah, so I stopped doing everything, but it didn't get any better. I still felt really low. I wasn't doing anything. You know, like, not that you know, but like, depression, I feel like it's quite a spoken thing now. You just do end up not being able to do anything. You have no energy. I just wanted to sleep all the time. I was still trying to go to competitions, but I just was like, didn't care. And then it slowly started to lift. And then I got really bad anxiety. It was like one smack in the face after the other. And then I, really had a really terrible time with anxiety from the middle of last year till the beginning of this year, where I got to the point where I like couldn't go out the house, couldn't go and get fuel, couldn't go to, this is something that I'd struggled with as a young child. Basically just a big fear of what people think of me, and like embarrassing myself. And it just manifested. I think it's because I'd had a dark time, and it had built, and I'd got really away from my faith. So yeah, that was really tough to overcome. And I think what I've learned sorry, I was getting to the point with the story. What I've learned with all this is like how important it is to not overdo it, because wow, can it throw you off track. Like, yeah, I was super productive for 3 months to 3 months to 6 months, great, but I crashed for like a solid year after that. And it's not possible, and I don't have to be like misproduction. So really what I'm trying to do in this coronavirus situation is figure out how I can earn my income, like pay my mortgage without working myself into the ground, so that I can spend more time with my horses, and not do as much, because I think, you know, in the equestrian world, it's like a badge of honor. How hard can you work yourself into the ground? It's not like that in normal life, you know, like my friends that have jobs, like other jobs, they're like, yeah, we have weekends off and it's okay. We don't look at each other like, well, I did all this on the weekend. Like the equestrian world is like, well, I get up at 5 and I do this, and oh my god, you went on a holiday, I can't do that, you know. And you're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be doing that. Like so much shame in taking a break. And my mum is very much, you know, my mum and my dad come from a family that work hard, so they have that, and they've just passed it on to me. It's funny now, I just sit there in my chair on my day off and they're like, you're not going to do anything. I'm like, no, it's my day off. Yeah, they say they learn a lot from me, which is cool. But yeah, so through the corona stuff, I'm really trying to find a way of doing that. And I think it's hard when you have I have so many options, because I'm very blessed in many areas like that I've built up now. It's hard to almost know where to go. I think what I'm going to try and do is just keep teaching closer at home, and actually, like with the social media, not sell myself short. So like when a company approaches me, actually I am going to charge you to put that on my wall, instead of going like, I'll do it for nothing. Like obviously I'm going to love the product. I'm going to I'm not just going to accept people that I don't like because I want to be authentic, but I'm going to like hold my value, and not do everything for nothing, and not say yes to everyone. And I'm really, really starting to get to a better place with that. And I think, you know, social media is so incredible that you can do it remotely wherever you are. So ideally, like I want the coaching to be like just to coach people, not because, oh my god, I have to pay my mortgage, but because I like love doing it.
Right.
And then with the stuff on social media, again, still really enjoying it, but also put a value on it, because I think, you know, I think people underestimate how hard people work on social media to build what they've built, and it gets completely underestimated by brands, by companies, which really infuriates me, because if they go and pay an advert in the magazine, they'll be paying like triple more than like we're asking, and actually we could give them more reach. It's more authentic, and that really frustrated me. So I'm really starting now, I think, working with the FEI. So I'm a guest vlogger for the FEI. They really gave me my worth. I know that sounds really odd, but the guy we work with the FEI, he is not horsey, and he saw the videos and he really saw the value, and he saw what was going on, and he was like, yeah, we want to work together. And he's like, you're doing great things. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to be recognized. So now I feel like they've really helped me. So yeah, it's just, I think, to be honest, the way I want my business to go a little bit is to teaching, not to go en masse, but the social media more to bring the income in, but in like a really authentic, genuine way. I don't want to sell myself out, which I doubt I would, because I'm always more cautious of like, I've never put any adverts up, so I need to be a little bit braver to do it. But yeah, that's sort of where I was thinking of going.
Yeah, that's good. I think, and it's interesting shift for, there's two things. The idea that, that numbing piece, right? It's that judgment of when someone said, stop playing the victim.
Yeah.
You're just assuming that, it's a judgment, right? And I think people, they are so hard on themselves, and when that stuff is highlighted for you. So I have this belief that we're put on this earth, God, creator, universe, whatever resonates with whoever is listening, and you're whole. You're exactly how you should be. You know how to manage all of your emotions. You let it flow out by kicking, screaming. You know, that is how you release that dense energy out of your body. And then at some point, someone starts to tell you, you can't scream in restaurants. You know, you can't act that way.
Yeah,
you can't
so true.
You start to adapt.
Socially acceptable, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I feel like our journey on this planet is to find your way back to that place where you are whole. And that piece is that not making any emotion wrong or right. Like, I'm a human being. I can get frustrated. I can get, angry. I can have all these experiences, these emotions. None of them are wrong. But the suppression of them repeatedly, I feel like, is what the universe brings back to us with our horses, with people in our lives, with the situations. I think the horses are big because a lot of people will make shifts for themselves
Yeah.
for their horse before they'll make them for their family and themselves.
So true. So true.
And so that idea that once you can just go, it's okay for me to feel annoyed right now, then that
Yeah.
immediately, once you release that judgment of yourself, then
Yeah.
it passes through much faster, right? And
Yeah.
it's, oh
And
no, I'm feeling.
if anyone's listening that struggles with this, a really good book to read is the Brene Brown books. So
Mhm.
she studied vulnerability and shame. No, yeah, she studied shame originally, and it's so eye-opening
Mhm.
for all the stuff that I was just talking about. She's so good, so
Yeah,
good.
she's amazing. Slightly obsessed with her. So yeah, so it's that when people are, especially with social media, and I know so many trainers are starting to go more online now because of the situation, is that's what they're kind of looking at, going, oh, now I have to really kind of put myself out there, whether it's on video or,
Yeah.
figuring out you're being kicked up to this next level of vulnerability that you have to go into, which is
Yeah,
big for them.
so true.
The second thing I wanted to ask you about, because I've talked to a couple trainers who are very competitive. Now all of our shows are shut down. So they've got these barns full of these horses where everyone consistently is kind of saying, our horses are going so much better now. And I
Yeah.
was like, what is it? And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's this. And I was like, could it possibly be the pressure has been released? Like there is no show, there is no agenda. You're just riding your horse like you should be, where it's at, trying to make it better for that day. And
Yeah.
that's what's happening, right?
Yeah, I really
So
think
I don't
so.
know how, yeah, and so that's been kind of an interesting thing where they're like, oh, and it's like, this whole thing is kind of highlighting that, like, this is, maybe go here, maybe stop making that such a big deal, maybe figure out what that means, because why are, so it's been an interesting shift. I know it's hard for a lot of people, but also I feel like there is potential to find gifts in it all. So,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah, but yes, oh gosh, we've talked for a long time, haven't we? I could talk
Yeah,
forever.
good. Yeah.
um, but yeah, so amazing, beautiful. So where can people find, if they want to contact you, if they want to get on your online stuff, how can they find you?
So my Instagram is Towers432. I know that's really not original, but it was my personal one, and then it stuck, and then everyone knew me as that, and then now I can't change it because it's too big. I'm stuck with it now. But all the other ones are Olivia Towers Dressage. So YouTube is Olivia Towers Dressage, Facebook is that, and also I have a podcast which is Olivia Towers Podcast. Not very original, but so with the podcast, I really feel like they're close to my heart at the moment because I interview like other professional riders, like people I've known for years but don't know their stories, and we just chat through
Mm-hmm.
highs, lows, which is really cool to like bring other people into my platform because I've been so vulnerable with myself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's only so much I can talk about myself because I'm one person. Whereas when I can bring other people's experiences in, it's
Right.
so special. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think this has been my favorite thing I've done so far,
Yeah.
actually, just because I feel like, so my yoga teacher had said a couple weeks ago when we were allowed to go to yoga, he had said before he started the class, he was like, what did people do before antidepressants, before
Yeah.
alcohol, before all of this social media that you can numb out on? What did people do? And he was like, you came around the fire in a community and you shared your stories, you shared your
Yeah.
struggles, you shared your experiences. He's like, that's how you actually became whole and fully authentically connected and healed.
Yeah.
He's like, without all the stuff.
That's what we're like literally made for though.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
crazy thing. We're not made
Yes.
for we're not made for this Western world that's moving at like a million miles an hour. It's just
Yeah.
not normal.
Yeah. And I think that's why these conversations are so powerful for people, because that's all that it
Yeah.
is, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I felt that way. Shit, I thought I was the only one. It's like, no,
Yeah,
we're all human beings
that's
doing
it.
human
That's
being things.
huge. It's resonating with people is huge. Being like,
Mhm.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending the
No
time.
worries. It was really
And
fun.
yeah, I look forward to watching all of your things moving forward from here and seeing how things shift for everybody. It's
Cool.
interesting times for sure.
Yeah, very different.
All right, then thank you.
Bye. Bye.